Hey there everybody, this is Holly Edwards and I am going to be doing a demo on how to make one of these watercolor blobs. In order to do this, you're going to need watercolor brushes, a cup of water, salt, rubbing alcohol, and watercolors. So I have here my finished product and I'm going to move it aside to a blank piece. So on my blank piece of paper, I'm going to do what people don't normally do, which is actually start with just water. So I have my brush and I have a bigger brush for this, and I'm taking it and dipping it in the water, and then I'm going to create a shape. Doesn't matter what shape you create, it's going to be an abstract blob-like shape, and I'm just adding water to it to make the surface wet. Then I'm going to probably switch to a slightly smaller paintbrush, and I'm going to wet that brush, take a color from my watercolor palette. I think I'm going to go for blue, and I'm going to make sure I have lots of color on that with water, and I'm just going to dip it into the water that's on the paper. So I'm looking and I'm making sure that I'm dipping it in spots that are already wet, and I can even draw in there. And I'm just letting the water do whatever it wants as I go. I'm going to wash my brush and I'm going to get another color. Let's do this really bright magenta color. That's fun. So I'm dipping the color in. I can drag the paint. I can just do dots. I can make big blobs of color, but I'm just making sure that I'm getting it all over wherever I got wet. So I'm going to add a third color, and I think I'm going to do yellow today, this bright orange yellow, because I want a really colorful blob today. I'm not really sticking to any color scheme. And I'm going to dip that color in. This is a really bright color. And you may be wondering, why salt and alcohol? That is going to happen right after I finish putting all the color in. So I'm going to do a couple more dots of yellow. And you can see there's some puddling happening on the paper, and then there's other spots that are not puddling. You can always take your paintbrush, turn it upside down, press it on the paper, and watch the water flow, and that'll help balance out your picture. So I don't know which way is up yet, and that's okay. It doesn't really matter which way is up until it's dry. So I'm going to take my salt and just sprinkle it on the wet watercolor, and you can see that it's already doing what I want it to do, which is absorb some of the pigment and dissolve into the water, as salt always does. And when it's dry, it'll create a crystal-like effect that looks really cool. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a clean brush, just like this one, and I'm going to dip it in the alcohol, and very carefully I'm going to just dip it onto my paper. I can let it drop at random like that, or I can have a specific idea of where I want things to go. And the thing I love about alcohol is that it creates this hole effect in your watercolor. It can create caves, it can create craters, all kinds of really interesting effects happen when you use alcohol. So you can see this is an immediate effect as well. It's not something you have to wait for it to work. So the chemical reaction of the alcohol in the water is what making the watercolor spread out. That was a good one. And if I want to, I can wash the same tiny brush, and I can start pulling out grass-like features just by pulling the watercolor that's already there. and I've got my watercolor blob finished. While I'm waiting for that to dry, I can take my sketchbook and I can figure out, hey, what do I want to have on this watercolor blob? And when it's dry, I can input those in there. So I'm going to take this paper towel, I'm going to dip it in here real quick to soak up some of that water so I can move my picture. And I'm going to place it somewhere flat so that it has time to dry. You don't want to tip it, because if you tip it, it will drip. So here I have one that's finished already, and on this one I could put a dragon, I could put a bird, I could put a bunch of sea creatures, I could do pretty much anything that I want to do, but I'm going to show you one that I have finished. Well, not finished, but drawn on. So this one is drawn on, and it's got a Southwest theme. I think the colors made me feel like it was Southwestern. But I have a snake and some roadrunners on there. By no means do you have to draw animals. You can draw aliens, you can draw monsters, you can draw people, you can draw anything that you want. And in the end, you can decide how you want to finish it. You can do color pencil, you can do pen, you can just do regular pencil, you can even paint in with watercolor on those. It's all up to you, but the end result is really interesting. It's always really playful, and these blobs are really fun to make. So I hope you enjoyed my tutorial on how to do a watercolor blob.